UFC 320 took place at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. In the headlining bout, Alex Pereira defeats Magomed Ankalaev at just 1 minute and 20 seconds of round number one. We were just discussing this. I mean, there's not a lot to talk about in this fight, is there? At 1 minute and 20 seconds, he just bulldozes him. He just marched right through him. Dude, you just don't. I mean, honestly, like among somebody as good a champion who is as decorated and has as much tenure as Ankalaev has, how many times have you seen in a UFC title fight someone get bulldozed like that? Very rarely. Very rarely. To just get absolutely run over. And I understand that it's just one mistake or one miscalculation, and Poatan is an unforgiving puncher. We know. I understand that. Nevertheless, it's just historically what you saw there in terms of that kind of just one big bank, take little bank, 84s and candy paint. That just thing just does. Yes, it happens quite frequently in MMA, happens quite frequently in the UFC. It is quite infrequent for something like that to happen in a title fight. And I got to say, this is one of the joys of MMA, if I do say so myself, and I'm sure as an MMA fan, you will agree as well. Very rarely are you able to get like a minute and 20 seconds out of a main event and everyone goes home happy, right? Pretty remarkable that you can get that. And of course, that happens in boxing too. It's extremely rare, even rarer in MMA than boxing than in MMA. But still, MMA, these kinds of things can, I mean, it's rare UFC, but the point I'm making is MMA fans are so kind of attuned to what they want is not necessarily the bout's longevity, or they don't feel cheated if the bout's longevity becomes into question. They feel quite rewarded, and I think it speaks to the greatness of the sport when it works. Dude, that was so insane. We discussed this ahead of time, and it was really hard to know what the truth was if you're not in the camp. By the way, John Jones tweeting a thanks to Alex for a moment of silence for his brother's death. Indeed, a very classy gesture. We had said we knew that in the first fight, Poatan just didn't look like himself. I'll show you some of the stats that kind of evidence that. But one of the things you can point to in the first fight was that he only targeted, so that means either with punches or elbows or kicks or anything, he only targeted the head, I think 16 or 17% of the time. He had 60+% targeting the leg kicks. And not just that, it was just leg kicks that was a switch step. So it was an outside leg kick, which are not nearly as typically. I mean, sometimes they can be real powerful, but when that back leg comes swinging, that's when you get like the heavy stuff, which by the way, even in this little amount of fight, you got some of that too. And you saw, as a matter of fact, what did you see from Ankalaev? He switched stance to counteract that. Now I need to go back and look. Was he in his normal stance when he threw that check? He was trying to throw. No, I think he was in opposite stance. I think Ankalaev, I need to see that. Hold on. I want to go back and look. Well, now that got that. Now I want to see. Did he get him in opposite stance when he drilled him? Let's see. Now I'm going to go through. Here we go. Here's the tape. Let me see. All right. So he's pressuring overhand right. Yep. He's in the wrong stance. He hit him in the wrong. Yes. Holy fucking shit. Holy shit. I didn't even notice it in real time. Now I do. Boys and girls, Ankalaev was in orthodox. Now he can switch stance. That's not a thing that he's necessarily uncomfortable doing, but a lot of that is typically through transition. He has switched stance in other fights when he got kicked in the leg, but his best stance is obviously his natural stance, particularly when his defensive responsibility is best when he's southpaw. He's that's why you had an open stance fight. Poatan kicked him in the legs enough with the back leg where he switched. And then when Poatan came over with the right, Ankalaev is in his, again, it's not a stance that he has complete unfamiliarity with, but it is not his optimal stance. No. So he's here when he should be here. And so he tries to greet him with that left hook when you saw Poatan lower his level a little bit and then come over the top. So, holy fucking shit, dude. Maybe I'm overselling the stance. Let me go back and look at the stance switch now. I want to see the stance switch. And obviously, I can't show that part to you. Let's see here. Let's see that stance switch. Oops, excuse me. Let me go through here very quickly. I really want to see this because that changes everything. All right, look, he comes over right away. I'm going to just talk you through this. He comes over right away. I want to see that leg kick. Where does it come through? Because if it's the case, now he switched a little bit here to push him off again, but he gets right back to southpaw. Here we are. Poatan just constantly touching and feinting him backwards. So they're still orthodox, open stance this whole time. We're still 30 seconds in, open stance. He's trying to move laterally, goes back to open stance, right? Kicks him in the leg with the backside leg kick. All right, you see him try to move forward. Ankalaev, still the back leg. He tries to check. He does a little bit off the back leg, but he's still open stance. We're now 4:18. Kicks him again, and he switches. Yes! And then he kicks the outside leg. Holy shit. How incredible is that? In the first fight, he had, I think there were some kicks from the back leg to the lead leg of Ankalaev, but most of them were that step up and then throw to the outside, which is, again, there can be some times where that's powerful, but typically that's not going to be as powerful. We were all saying, how the fuck could he be getting hit with all these leg kicks, and it didn't seem to faze him? And the answer is, well, maybe because Poatan couldn't put enough steam on him is really the answer. And I guess he had trouble getting to a place where he felt comfortable to really slam the back leg, because maybe he didn't feel like he could retreat or whatever. He just didn't throw it with the same kind of ferocity. This time, he went right on it. Several times he threw it. And there was one time where you saw Ankalaev try to check. Poatan goes back to it, so he switches stance. Well, now, again, as I indicated, now his defense isn't quite as good because he's in an unnatural spot, and Poatan continued to... Wow, dude. Pours on the offense. We saw it before, lowers his level a little bit, comes over. Ankalaev tries to greet him with a check hook, but he's slow to react. So this whole area is open, and as a consequence, that punch lands. And from there, he tries to get a reactive takedown. Poatan stuffs it, gets on top, is elbowing with either side. Dude, holy shit. Everyone is going to make the argument that this was about the pressure that Poatan put on him. And yes, clearly, the pressure was an absolutely essential ingredient to that success. But the biggest part, of course, was, yes, he could throw the right hand. That's another big component because he couldn't really throw the right hand the last time. That was a part of it. And then also that he got him to go to a more vulnerable place and then continue to pour on the offense with the defensive lapses that come with it. And he's got absolutely unforgiving power. Dude, so it was the pressure, yes. It was the right hand, yes. But the leg kicks from the back leg, forcing a stance switch by Ankalaev right around the 4:15, 4:10 mark of the first round, that sealed his fucking demise. Poatan was telling the truth about the things that held him back the first time. He was telling the truth. He threw those bullshit leg kicks because that was all he could really throw, I guess, given the state he was in. He didn't really have the steam on the back one. He had the fucking steam this time. Got Ankalaev to go to an unnatural stance. Again, he can play with it a little bit, as I've indicated, but it's not his dominant one, and he made him pay for it. When so many times, right? You guys know the story. If you're an MMA fan, I'm not about to tell you anything you don't know, but so many times fighters go into a fight, they underperform, and then afterwards they've got a litany of excuses. And the thing is this, I'm actually sympathetic to them, because anybody who's ever been to an MMA gym or anybody who out there who trains, and you've got people who do sport jiu-jitsu, or if you're at one of these gyms that's got MMA fighters, these guys are fucked up all the time. This hurts, that got dislocated in camp. I twisted my ankle doing fucking road work, whatever. They've got something going on. So it's not like I disbelieve it, but it's just hard to know how much that explained the loss, right? That's the hard part. I'm not doubting that they're fucked up, but how much of that really was the thing that impacted your performance? Because sometimes these guys are messed up and they win, So it's really, really hard to know. We knew that it looked unnatural for him. Again, he looked like himself, but, he's normally at volume 7 or 8. This one, he was 9.5. And then in that first fight, he was kind of like volume 4.5, 5. So he wasn't moving in a way that was unnatural. He just needed to do more. You got more. And you got more. Like, this is the power. This is the magic, I should say, of Poatan. Is he the most complete fighter? No, he is not the most complete fighter. Of course, you already know that. But he lands with such punishing degree that he forces guys into suboptimal reactions or suboptimal choices through dilemma. Right? I'm going to hit you with a leg kick, and now I'm going to make you get into an unnatural stance, and then I'm going to land a punch, and then I'm just going to close the show. Like, it's absolutely unforgiving with the power, but the power, even if it doesn't stop you in some of the other stages, particularly with the leg kicks, it just compromises everything, and then the downstream results all are a consequence of that. Like, what he does is he forces you through thudding, crippling power to make some kind of choice that makes you much more vulnerable going forward. And then he really begins to pour it on. Like, that's really what he does. Sometimes he's got like one hitter quitters. Yes, of course, we've all seen him before, but that's typically not necessarily what he's always doing. Usually, there's some other thing that can precipitate that. Now, that's not always the case. Again, that left hook on Jamal Hill was kind of interesting, but you saw that him setting up in other ways against Sean Strickland and whatnot. The reality of that body jab, the reality is, dude, he lands punishing shots that make. This is what I talk about all the time. Fighters landing body shots, for example, or landing leg kicks, and then being like, "Well, I landed a bunch on them." When you land on someone in MMA, particularly at the highest level, which I know makes it even harder, but it's just the reality, you have to visibly effectuate change. So if this fight goes to a decision, the judge has to be able to see, look at him switching stance because the leg kick hurt, or some kind of punch lands, and now they're changing the way they fight. Poatan makes his opponents, when he's shining, Poatan makes his opponents fight in suboptimal ways on his terms. You can pick which way you want to fight compromised, but you're gonna fight compromised. That's when he's dealing, that's what you get. He forces people to compete in ways that they would absolutely never want to compete. And he does it quickly. And you can see them. Uh-oh, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to visibly change the way that I'm fighting. Ding. So either the judge is going to pick up on it or Poatan's going to pick up on it. But either way, it's going to be a problem. So many fighters, they land on their opponents and don't ever make their opponent visibly change the way that they fight. Poatan does. And he certainly did here. That is fucking brilliant. Dude, that is about as clear an example of a guy telling the truth about the stuff that held him back in the first fight by the way he performed in the rematch. Like, totally validates everything he said. Completely. Now, listen, you might say, well, listen, if that right hand doesn't land, do we get a different fight? Well, I mean, I have no way of knowing this. I don't know. Yeah, maybe he would tire out. Maybe Ankalaev would eventually got a takedown. Maybe you would have seen some wrinkles, or I should say some lapses, I should say, in his defensive wrestling. Yeah, maybe those things are true. But the point is, this guy's weapon is not that he is the most well-rounded. It is that, of course, he's got, fight-ending power. Yes, he makes opponents change the way that they fight. They have to do things. They have to go to extremes. They have to go to lengths that is very uncomfortable for them just in order to maintain some kind of semblance of an attack or a defense. Damn. Damn, bro. That is so sick. That is so fucking cool that he did that. That is so fucking cool that he did that. Damn. That is awesome. How cool is that? Wow. He really showed him. Incredible. I love that so much. I love that he was like, he couldn't really get any of those weapons going in the first fight. He got them going right away in the second, and the results were immediate. They were immediate. This was the thing that we talked about, like in the Blachowicz fight. It's like, how was Blachowicz able to blow up his legs, and Poatan, like the master of the leg kicks, couldn't do it? It's because most of them were to the outside, off open stance. So it's that step up just to throw that leg kick, like a switch step up. It doesn't, again, there's something to it, but not a lot. Blachowicz wasn't doing that shit. Blachowicz was back leg, bah, right into him. And you saw Ankalaev, to the point where Ankalaev, that part of the reason that I've been calling Ankalaev Donkalaev is many reasons. Like the one of the Johnny Walker fights is one of the reasons. Getting subbed out by Paul Craig at the last fucking second of a 3-round fight is one of those as well. That fight is another one. Because it's like, dude, why are you sitting there allowing Blachowicz to leg kick you, take him down? And eventually he did, but only enough. It was too little, too late, and it was only enough to hold on to a draw. And so it's like, well, why couldn't Poatan do that? Because he was fucked up. He didn't have the gas. He didn't have the injury readiness. He didn't have any of the things that he needed. Well, he had him this time. Yo, that is so fucking cool. I love that. I love it for him. You know what I mean? I love it for him that he was able to be like, I'm going to show everybody. I'm going to show you that I was telling the truth about this, because they all have, some story to tell. It's hard to know what it means. The other component that's interesting about this is two things. We'll talk about what it sets up here in just a second. But the other part is, you have to respect this man's, I mean, I know you all do, but we need to say it out loud. You have to respect this man's, first of all, his combat sports career is fucking insane. But just on the UFC run, we've all talked about it, moving very quickly through middleweight. And did he get every tough challenge? No. But gets the belt from Izzy in this incredible fight. Eventually, Izzy gets it back. He moves up to light heavyweight. He eventually gets the title himself and then loses it. And you think to yourself, wow, now he's the oldest active champion on the UFC roster. And we've said it before, man, like once you get your title taken away from you, yes, you can go up to weight classes and you can get a second one. But when that one gets taken away from you, it's very hard to get that one back. You've seen people do that. Couture would be an example of that, right? He was a UFC heavyweight champion. He got beat by Josh Barnett beat him, and he eventually comes back and he gets a light heavyweight champion. And, Chuck takes that from him, and I forget some of the way that works. Or no, he took it from Tito, and then Chuck took it from him. I forget the origin of the whole thing, of the order anyway. But then he eventually goes back to heavyweight, and he gets the title again from Tim Sylvia, and then eventually Brock takes it from him. But you get the point I'm trying to make. Like, that's a very rare thing to do. A very rare thing to do. Poatan goes up and not only took it, just fucking housed him. I mean, credit to Couture coming out of retirement and beating Tim Sylvia, but he had to go the whole 5 rounds. Poatan marched in there and looked like he was fighting me. Just annihilated him. So that's the point I want to make. Not only does he go in there and gives you a title fight so dominant that you can only pick on your hand the number of title fights that ever looked like that. I mean, even Rich Franklin beating Nate Quarry didn't happen until like several minutes into him, and that was a vicious stoppage. I understand, but some amount of time had to expire. This was a minute and change, and he's doing that in the broader context of reclaiming a belt, when we know historically, once you're separated from it within an individual weight class, and certainly more broadly, but at least within an individual weight class, is very, very difficult to get back. And he still did it, and he did it even better than like that. That may be his best UFC win. Like, I'm not even. That is. Let's look at this. Of all of Poatan's wins in the UFC, these are his UFC wins. Ready for this? He won his debut in the second round. Bruno Silva, decision. Sean Strickland, 236 of round 1. Izzy in the 5th round. He loses to Izzy in the 2nd round. Blachowicz, he beats him over the course of 3. Yuri in the 2nd. Jamal, 314 into the 1st. Yuri in the 2nd. Khalil in the 4th. Magomed obviously loses it. This was the easiest fight of Poatan's UFC career. He's got, that might be his whole MMA career. His debut goes to the 3rd. He wins one at 4 minutes into the 1st. His next fight into the 2nd. His next fight, now we're in LFA, 4 minutes. This was the fastest fight of his fucking MMA career. This was dude, do you understand the level of fucking history you are looking at there? That is understand the broader context we've just been setting. And that was the fastest fight, not merely of his UFC campaign, of his fucking MMA career. That is insane. 38, oldest champion, fastest fight of his whole fucking career, fastest of the UFC, trying to reclaim a belt. This motherfucker is historically unusual in every way. What are the rules? Doesn't matter. What are the things that normally happen? Throw that shit out the window. Doesn't apply. Doesn't apply. So you got this whole other story about like how messed up he was in the first fight and how much he was telling the truth based on the results of this, plus this insane trajectory his whole career has been on, plus this insane history about title fights, plus this insane history about the context in which he's trying to win, given he already lost it to this guy. Man, when he goes, I've said this about some other guys. I'm not going to say it all the time, but when that dude goes, he is not going to be easily replaced. That is not a guy you look down on the roster, you're like, oh, there's other people coming up who can who on the I mean, we love Yuri. We'll talk about him in a minute. Who on the roster can replace that guy? It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. You're talking about one of the most unusual championship fighters in the history of this sport. Certainly one of the best light heavyweight campaigns. I mean, yeah, obviously, John Jones has got the best light heavyweight campaign by a gazillion miles. Cormier's is up there too, and I would probably put Cormier's ahead of his. But just with the compactness and how much he fills it with unusual levels of greatness, he is so special and so rare. It was so weird that it was so weird that like the buzz around him kind of died after the first Ankalaev fight, which, in retrospect, there's some reason to understand it because it was a lackluster fight. He had a lackluster effort, but it was just kind of weird that, it was this thing. And now, man, I really wonder, like the UFC has to be like all the execs, like, cheering their champagne, they're toasting their champagne flutes and, lighting up cigars because you got a guy who, yeah, they're moving away from pay-per-view, but just somebody that the fans are so eager to see who does like, during the course of your life, like I was never around for some of the greats. I mean, I was a kid when some of the big 80s fights were happening, but I missed all the ones in the 70s, obviously, and I missed all the ones. I was not alive for them. You can only be alive for a certain era. I say this all the time, man, because there's a lot of interesting things happening between boxing and MMA these days. We live in the age of Alexander Usyk. We live in, and I'm not putting him on the same level. I'm just saying guys who are doing interesting things in combat sports. I lived through Jordan Burroughs being an amazing freestyle wrestler and collegiate wrestler as well. I got to live through Poatan doing what he's doing at light heavyweight. It's insane. And middleweight too, obviously. But like, this is nuts. This is none of this shit's supposed to happen. Ankalaev is 33. He got smoked in this fight. Did nothing. Let's look at some of these stats. I'd love to see this shit. I'll show them to you here. Let's take a look. Let's take a look. I'm not even sure where to look on my goddamn screen half the time. Here we go. Let's take a look at some of these numbers here. Actually, you know what? Let me do this first so I don't make a big mess on the screen. There we go. Yeah, here we go. All right, let's do this and let's put this one up. Yeah, okay. Can you see? Let's see. All right, dude. This motherfucker landed 4 punches. 4 punches. He landed 4 punches. He got stuffed on a takedown. He got, yeah, of course, what the difference would be. Okay, look at this. Magomed, nothing to the head. Look at the targeting here. Granted, I understand it's a very short fight. 75% to the head. This is targeting, right? How much you target it. 10% to the body and then 14% to the leg. Now, do me a solid. Look at the first fight between them. Now look at the targeting here. Now, I know Poatan was in the blue before. He's in the red here. Look at this. I'm sorry. 14% he targeted the head in the first fight. 63. This was all he could muster. And I know that's over 5 rounds, but even that, I bet those numbers would stand. Excuse me, one more time here. I bet those numbers would stand here as well in terms of the targeting. Yeah, look, here's the targeting, right? So head. He didn't target the head at all in the first round of the first fight. Not a single, didn't throw anything to the head at all. Targeted 5 shots to the body and then 18 to the leg. It just goes all the way down. This is what I'm talking about. Proof of concept, he was telling the truth. Proof of concept, he was telling the truth. That the whole key to this shit was the pressure, yes. And that back leg, inside leg kick from orthodox Pereira to southpaw Ankalaev. Ankalaev has to switch, and now he's just playing with, fire at that point because you're not in your optimal place to be to be fighting under pressure and duress against a guy like that. Made him move into another play. Dude, that is so fucking sick. That is so sick. How do you not love that? Incredible. Incredible. Man, just a special fighter. Now, by the way, here we go. Performances of the night. Yuri Prochazka wins a performance bonus. Poatan and Pfeiffer. Fight of the night, Yuri versus Khalil. So I guess Khalil gets a little money as well. Yuri gets 2 of them. Dana White says he saw Poatan at the UFC PI today, and Alex said he wants to fight at heavyweight. We'll talk about that in a second. Alex was 240 in the cage. White feels like there are still fights for him at light heavyweight, but said it's up to Alex what is next. He said his biggest reservation, this is Dana White talking, this comes to us from the post-fight press conference, about Pereira fighting at heavyweight, is that he is used to fighting at middleweight, and 2 weight classes is a big jump. He doesn't see why heavyweight makes any sense aside from Alex wanting it. Well, let's talk about what might be next for Alex. So, okay, he's the champion. They're not going to give it to Ankalaev. That shit's out the window. So who are you going to give it to? Your choices are basically Carlos Ulberg or it's Yuri Prochazka. Now, it's got to be Carlos Ulberg, you're right? You would have to imagine, because Yuri has lost twice. Now, we're going to talk about Yuri's fight in just a moment, because that comeback was insane. Nevertheless, it just stands to reason that's the one you're going to get. Ulberg's coming off of a nice win. Granted, you can say what you want about the quality of the opposition or whatever, but I got to tell you, what's the most exciting fight you can make right now with Alex Pereira? Is it a third fight with Yuri? That might be good, but I'm not. I think Yuri's got some stuff to work on. Carlos Ulberg, he deserves it. I'm not going to argue. The obvious answer to this is if Tom Aspinall wins his next fight, it's Aspinall Poatan. And listen, I'm not even saying I would give Poatan a great shot to win that fight. But after doing this, after everything he's done, after reclaiming the throne in this way, yeah, he's earned it. He's earned it. He's earned it. You've got a special fighter at a rare moment in time. If he's asking for something a little exotic, you give it to him. Show of hands. Show of hands out there. Who would rather see Poatan Ulberg or Poatan, again, under the condition that Aspinall wins? Or fuck it, not even that. What am I even saying? If Cyril Gane wins, I want to see Poatan fight him. What are we talking about here? How is there any other answer? I'm not trying to disrespect Carlos Ulberg, but I'm sorry, that fight is not remotely as interesting as Poatan. Again, a little less so against Aspinall, given the wrestling factor and size factor. He's a special athlete, all that kind of stuff. But like Poatan versus Gane, sign me up. Sign me up. I take that, no problem. That is one of the most special fighters of that division, period. That is one of the most special fighters of this era, period. He has injected life and electricity, with very minimal exception, into this organization, has made a dramatic impact from the word go, has been important to salvage cards, and has redefined what is possible in terms of excellence in the sport itself. Nothing short of that. He has redefined the terms of excellence. Not by himself, other ones do it too, but he's part of that. Special, bro. Special. I would love to see him get a crack at heavyweight. If it's Ulberg, I'm not going to cry. He's earned it. Champions have a responsibility to the weight class. But yeah,